The professor crumpled the page with a weary sigh, muttering that the question didn't belong in the exam because no one could solve it, not even here. And in that small gesture, a quiet beginning unfolded. It was a chilly Thursday evening, at exactly 6:42 p.m. in early spring Cambridge. Professor Gerald Whitmore stood by his office window, his eyes fixed on the hazy campus lights blurred by creeping fog, while a forgotten cup of cold coffee rested beside towering stacks of intimidating math exams. The puzzle haunting him was Colot's conjecture, a deceptively simple sequence of numbers. Start with any number, divide it by 2 if it's even, or if it's odd, triple it and add 1, then repeat endlessly. But no one could prove where it ended, or if it even ended at all, a mathematical mystery that had eluded generations of scholars. Whitmore had dared to include it in the test, expecting no one would dare attempt such a fiendish question, and with a mix of frustration and resignation, he crumpled the page and tossed it into the recycling bin, convinced it was a hopeless pursuit. Yet, unbeknownst to him, on a floor below, 14-year-old Ellie Moore, the janitor's granddaughter, ink-stained fingers and scuffed sneakers, slipped quietly through a side door, not as a student or a legacy, but simply a girl trying to scrape together scraps of cardboard and paper to help pay the bills. She didn't belong in the academic world, or so they thought, but Ellie belonged to the unnoticed, the shadows, the silent spaces, the fragments of beauty everyone else missed. As she rifled through the recycling bin, her eyes caught the crumpled page, and out of pure curiosity, she carefully smoothed it flat on her knee. To her, numbers weren't cold rules, but living things in motion. She saw arrows, loops, and spirals unfolding like falling leaves caught in a wild breeze, each unpredictable path eventually settling into the same mysterious pile. Time slipped away as she traced these patterns, utterly captivated, until the janitor's distant voice called her to leave. Later that night, in their cramped apartment above the laundromat, Ellie sat hunched over the page, copying the problem repeatedly on a worn cereal box, scribbling at the top, "Why do they all end the same way?" She didn't need an answer yet. Just holding the question felt like a secret song humming quietly inside her, a wild hope that someday someone would understand. The next morning, sunlight poured over her cluttered floor as she returned to Harvard, slipping into an empty seminar room where a massive chalkboard awaited. There, she mapped the problem not with numbers, but with sweeping curves and intersecting paths that dove, spun, and twisted, always converging into a single clearing, a hidden shape beneath the chaos. Her fingers traced the chalk dust as she wrote "why," with wide, searching eyes, feeling that this was more than a puzzle. It was a secret waiting to be uncovered. But then, maintenance rattled the door, and panic flooded her. She erased half the board and fled, leaving behind only faint ghostly marks and the lingering question. Days later, Ruth, her grandmother, handed Ellie a folded newspaper with a snippet Ellie had sent in as a joke, a riddle printed for the world to see, whispering clues, "It climbs, it falls, it always ends the same." Quiet murmurs stirred in the math building, professors exchanging curious glances as Whitmore, restless and haunted by the crumpled question, wondered if anyone had dared try. Ellie continued her secret work, charting sequences that folded like origami, whispering softly, "You can copy the tree, but you can't grow its roots," unaware of how close the world was to noticing. Then came a call from janitorial. "Your conjecture is alive." Whitmore rushed to the seminar room and found the chalkboard covered not with numbers, but with loops, gateways, and a central circle marked twice. Below it, Ellie had written, "It isn't a formula, it's a path." Beneath that, he added a question. "Who are you?" The door was left cracked open, an invitation. The next day, Ellie found the question and stood in the doorway, feeling seen for the first time in her life, though she whispered softly, "I'm no one." The room, the chalk dust, and the echoes around her said something different. They said she was everything. When Whitmore finally met her, he didn't ask for credentials or proofs. He simply smiled and said, "Show me." And Ellie did, explaining how sequences intersected, where numbers seemed to slow down, calling these points hinges rather than statistical attractors, because she didn't have the technical words for it, only breathing points, places where numbers appeared to pause and reflect before moving on. For Whitmore, this was a revelation, A new way of seeing things. Word spread quickly through the faculty about this young girl, mapping convergence points no one had quite understood like this before. Ellie, notebook in hand, stood before a room full of professors, half skeptical, the other half stunned, as she drew 3 different sequences that all passed through the same hinge, where motion slowed before collapsing. A hush fell over the room, and then an older man whispered, "That's not wrong." That was the moment the room truly went silent for her, and afterward, Whitmore told her, "You said something true. That's rare here." She laughed, the tension finally breaking. Back at home, Ruth gave her a new notebook and said, "Sometimes silence means they're listening." Ellie smiled, knowing that was true, though sometimes that silence didn't last. Harvard wanted a piece of her. Committees, donors, press, mentorship, but always with conditions. Her diagrams, her story, her name on their rosters. "Will they make me prove I belong?" she asked Whitmore. "Yes," he admitted, "but you get to choose what you give them." Soon her sanctuary was gone. The seminar room reassigned, doors closed, so Ellie found a new one, an abandoned garage. 3 blocks from campus, swept clean, walls covered with pinned papers, colors, and curves. Here she worked on her own terms, red for rise, blue for fall, gold for loops, sketching not for publication, but for the pure joy of discovery. Meanwhile, back at Harvard, faculty circled, some eager to claim her ideas, others scheming to package her story before she even knew what she wanted. Whitmore watched, teeth clenched. She doesn't need a stage. She needs space. In the garage, Ruth brought food and listened, never pressing, saying, "It's still growing," as she looked at the wall of sketches without needing to know the details. Whitmore found a note from Ellie. "I'm not disappearing. I'm building somewhere no one can take apart while I'm still learning how it holds together." He smiled, pride and sadness mingling. On the wall, Ellie had scribbled in the margin, "You can copy the tree, but you can't grow its roots." 2 grad students tried to claim her ideas but missed the heart of it entirely. When Whitmore finally tracked Ellie down, he stood in her garage surrounded by diagrams of motion and color that seemed to dance. "You came," she said. He nodded. She showed him her latest discovery. Sequences converging not at a point but at an angle, not a destination, but a pivot. "They don't just meet, they pivot," she whispered. "They share a rhythm even if they don't share an end." He saw it, saw her. "This isn't a project," he said. "It's a contribution." He left her a note. "If the girl returns, don't ask for credentials. Ask what the numbers sound like when no one is speaking." He meant it. Word spread. Committees sent offers. Harvard's Office of Advancement wanted to showcase her. Ellie said no, not out of fear but out of knowing her own worth. Instead, Whitmore invited her to a different kind of meeting. A quiet seminar with no stage, no cameras, just an open chair in the North Rotunda and an invitation. "You may speak if you wish." Ellie entered, didn't sit, just held up her sketchbook. On one page was a spiral, open-ended with the word "still." On the next, a series of curves all converging toward a silent point. She said, "If you only measure what moves, you'll miss the thing that holds it all still." Then she left, as quietly as she had come. No one spoke for a long time. Eventually, the oldest professor sat in her place, looked at the spiral, and whispered, "I've never felt more like a student." That night, Ruth handed Ellie an envelope. "You've built a language worth waiting for." In room 203, someone wrote on the board, "This seat has no name, but whoever sits here will not be interrupted." Back in the garage, Ellie pinned up a blank page. "What happens after silence is heard." She smiled and turned off the light, not because the story was finished, but because she knew it didn't need proof to be real. So, what do you think? Is brilliance something you prove, or something you just listen for until the silence finally answers back? Yeah, that's what I thought. If you've ever seen genius blooming where no one expected or felt like you had something worth drawing before the world was ready to see it, drop your thoughts below. Is it the question or the answer that really matters? You tell me.